Take that, you space alien. Oh. Sorry, folks. You, caught me playing a game here called Alien Storm. It is a pretty awesome game, but, I'll tell you about this game later. But, one thing I do have to say, one thing I forgot to mention, I mean, during my time when I was talking about the Sonic the Hedgehog and Sega games, there was one thing I forgot to mention that I do have, and I cannot believe that I got it, is this. Sega Genesis Arcade Mode. Now, this one was my first plug-and-play Sega game I have. My grandma bought it for me. Thought it was really neat. But take a look at this thing here. Now, my grandma bought this thing during the same time when the Nintendo Wii came out. And check this out. One thing is really neat about this, I mean, sadly, it's not as better as my handheld one because, well, this thing has like over 40 Sega games, and this is what the system itself looks like, and it has a plug-in and such, so you can play it anytime. Has on and off in a menu. But one thing it kind of boggles me the most is that, I mean, take a look at this. This thing here. This here is a controller for the Sega that I got. The Sega plug-in game. Called the Sega Genesis Arcade Mode Dual. And it has these. Does these things remind you of something? That's right, folks. They remind me of the Wii control. I mean, it's like Sega is still competing with Nintendo, even though Sega game systems are completely out of business. Crying shame. And yes, I did have a Wii controller. And in case some of you gonna be asking me, no, I don't have a Wii U or the Nintendo Snatch. Because I lost interest of Nintendo. Because I'm always more of a PlayStation guy. And for those of you who are going to be asking me, am I ever going to have an Xbox? Well, I don't want to spend money on another Xbox game, so probably not. But one thing I did discover, that there was a certain game, it kind of reminds me of a certain franchise. I mean, there was a Sega video game, it kind of reminded me of Flash Gordon. No, not that Flash Gordon. Even though it is a good show, pretty dramatic. I'm talking about the one from Dilo De Laurentiis. Yeah, that's right. The one from the 1980. Boom, 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 Flash! Ah, meow, meow, savior of the universe! Can't get over that song. I mean, I found a video game that's pretty much similar to Flash Gordon. Oh, speaking of Flash Gordon, I still remember that IDW still owned the rights to Flash Gordon, although it's also part of Ardrin Entertainment. But come on! Dynamite Entertainment? Why don't you do a crossover of Flash Gordon meet Buck Rogers? It would be a really good crossover and pretty much satisfy the die-hard old-fashioned fans back in the old days. But the video game I'm talking about today, it did kind of make me think about Flash Gordon. And the video game I'm going to be talking about... Oh, before I get to the video game, there's one thing I wanted to say. I heard it on the news. Disney finally hired James Gunn. They finally hired him to direct Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And one thing I gotta say about this is this. Woohoo! Hallelujah! There is a God! But enough about the Guardians of the Galaxy. Let's get to the one I'm going to review for you today. And the game I'm going to review for you was created by Sega. And I wish it was called Flash Gordon, but the design and everything kind of makes me think of Flash Gordon. And the game I'm going to talk to you is none other than Space Harrier. Now, for those of you who never experienced any Sega game, don't even know what Space Harrier is, well, let me tell you this. It started out... It was created by a Japanese video game designer who wanted to create a science fiction video game that is completely 3D. And in the game, you play the space hero who is running, but if you hit the up button, he can fly around and shoot his lasers, while a bunch of evil aliens and monsters starts coming at you. And it's a lot like one of those jet shooters kind of 3D game, but this one was more space themed. And therefore, Sega decided to make their first arcade version of Space Harrier. And here's the hero, and that's the arcade. Of course, there are some different ones. But it is a pretty neat game to think about. And when the game itself got really popular enough, and back then the video game was made back in 1985. Same year I was born. Anyway, and when they finally got the game in the game system, there were a lot of versions, especially ones on the Famicom and such, and even on PC versions of it. Some of them were good, but the design, I mean, it was nothing like the arcade. Arcade video games are way better. And since it is Sega, that's when the Sega game system decided to make their Space Harrier Sega game. And here's the guy firing the space dragon. And one thing I thought was really weird, seeing a cycloptic mammoth. And some people say that the game is pretty difficult until all of a sudden, and of course, when they finally got the game system into Sega Genesis, they didn't make the first game for the Sega Genesis. They mostly made it for the Sega Master System. Sega Master System was the first Sega game made before the Sega Genesis. But in the Sega Genesis, they made this game, Space Harrier 2. It's pretty much a lot like the other game, like the first one. So if you're trying to play the game for the first time, some people say that the second game is a lot better than the first game. Kind of like what they said about the Sonic the Hedgehog. And then they made another one, and this one you use a Sega scope. You know, one of those shooting scope things. And they made this Space Harrier 3D, where they make it completely 3D, like it's coming at you. Here's a little something about 3D. In the screen, it looks all 3D. But in real life, I look more like a spaz. Anyway, years later, the arcade decided to do it again and make another Space Harrier game, which it had four different characters in it. And instead of calling it Space Harrier, they call it Planet Harriers. And it has 3 characters. One's a cop, the other one's a knight, the other one's a rock star, and the other one's a nurse. And you do the same thing, except it's all 3D and more modern. It's not all that good, but it's fun nonetheless. And it is Planet Harrier. And then if you have a game system with a typing, well, Sega decided to make this version, Typing Space Harrier, where now you're just typing the words down instead of shooting. Kind of reminds me of Typing of the Dead. You know, House of the Dead typing game they made. And then in PlayStation 2, they decided to make another Space Harrier that they round up all the Space Harrier games together, including a brand new 3D one, where it's a lot like the old game, but completely 3D, and it is Space Harrier Complete Collection. From the Sega age. I wish I had that game on PlayStation 2. And of course, I also heard you can find the game on a lot of game systems, but don't get the ones from the Game Boy Advance because it's stupid. It's not that good. And of course, you should find the PlayStation 3 Sega Master System collection. But sadly, I got the Sega Genesis collection. Something told me I should have found the Master System collection, because I heard that the Sega Master System is a lot more fun than the Sega Genesis. Now, for me, I never had any experience with any of the sci-fi games. I was looking for some sci-fi games until I came across the Sega, and on this tablet, what I'm using right here, I downloaded this. Space Harrier 2 for the Android tablet. Look it up on Google Play and you can download it and have the same experience I had. Sorry this review is short. You know, since it's all science fiction, what am I doing wearing my Game Insane outfit? I think I should change into something a little bit more comfortable. Yeah, that's better. Back to my old Doctor Who outfit. You know, it's been a long time. Let's see, my sonic screwdriver's there. Uh-oh. Look at this. Broke. Only one piece is broke. But it still works, right? Yep. Still works. Well, folks, I decided, after my my Space Harrier review, and I apologize it's short, but I do say that Space Harrier, it just makes me feel like I'm playing a Flash Gordon game. But stay tuned. There are more science fiction stuff I want to talk about, because I found a lot of science fiction franchises and movies and cult films and such that I would like to talk about. And I also found a science fiction movie made in Egypt. And it's a science fiction comedy. Let's just hope it ain't Ancient Egypt! Nah. But sooner or later after I'm done with them, I'm going to talk about one of the greatest science fiction comedy that I remember watching since I was young. And it is in a not too distant future, next Sunday AD. Mystery Science Theater 3000. So you better stay tuned, because I'm making a review of that franchise sooner or later, after I'm done with a bunch of sci-fi stuff I got. So for those of you who likes my review of Space Harrier, please leave a comment down below, hit like and subscribe. And as for me, later. Wow! He reviewed Space Harrier? One of the greatest sci-fi shooting game in Sega. Well, I guess he must be done with Sega games right now. Well, nah, I ain't gonna bother him. I got other things to do. So this is Sonic the Hedgehog, telling you folks to leave a comment down below, hit like and subscribe. Now if you excuse me, gotta go fast.